Welcome to The Real Story. I'm Lori Perez. The quest for the Republican presidential nomination is now centered on South Carolina, and that state's primary election a week from Saturday. The candidates have moved into the Palmetto State, and so have the political ads in a big way. Tom Foreman went to see what it's like to be a voter in the middle of the political messaging storm ahead of South Carolina's primary.
South Carolina is under attack.
Yes, working together.
Campaign ads from Republican contenders are being fired around the clock now.
It is a moral imperative for America.
All aimed squarely at undecided voters like Cam Spencer in Charleston.
Thank goodness for the mute button.
And it's not just the TV. She starts receiving robocalls before she can even make her morning coffee.
It's 8:30.
It's 8:30.
And the phone's ringing.
And the phone's ringing.
I have a jobs and economic growth plan.
I don't feel like it's more than it is in 08 or in 10.
Yeah, but it's still not down to the wire.
Well, that's true, too. I hate to think what it's going to be like once we do get down to the wire.
Already, she and many others here are finding the onslaught almost inescapable. During her commute to work as a medical researcher, the radio rattles with more. There are also print ads, emails, flyers, yard signs. By lunchtime, she's already had her fill.
Between the ads that you see on TV and hear on the radio and read and get in emails, how many of these are you getting a day?
At least 20 or more.
And what do you expect next week?
Double that.
Really?
At least.
Will any of these change your mind?
No.
None?
None. None of the ads.
Are they wasting their money?
Yes. I believe they are.
She may be onto something. This focus group of undecided voters organized by CNN and Southern Methodist University watched several ads, liked some, disliked others, but generally agreed voters are just being hit with way too many.
I'm seeing a very large increase in ads on YouTube.
Matter of fact, I changed the channel 3 times and there were different ads, but all political on every channel at the same time.
Do all these ads make a difference to you?
Actually, they don't make a difference to me. They somewhat annoy me.
Cam Spencer is still making up her mind whom to vote for, but of one thing she is certain.
Are you tired of the ads yet?
Oh, I've been tired of the ads.
But she knows from sunup to sundown,
It's up into government.
until primary day, it will only get worse.
He seems like a more honest candidate.
Tom Foreman, Charleston, South Carolina.
In control of our lives.
Now, Mitt Romney will try to make it 3 for 3 while his rivals hope to hand him his first defeat of the campaign season. Fox News correspondent Jonathan Seri is in South Carolina to give us a sense of what people there are saying about the race.
GOP candidates are in South Carolina trying to connect with voters hard hit by the economy. At Papa's Breakfast Nook in Spartanburg, bread and butter issues are on everyone's mind.
What are the most important issues to the South Carolina voter in this election?
Jobs. Jobs is number one, and then our security overseas. We don't hear enough from the candidates about the security overseas.
In South Carolina, that's 2 most important things, is getting the debt under control and getting the economy under control.
Although South Carolina voters trend more socially conservative than their counterparts in New Hampshire, Mitt Romney's win in that state and Iowa can only help, says Wofford College political science professor Robert Jeffrey.
I think there will be momentum. I don't think it's going to, catapult him into a massive victory, but it's going to be very difficult for the other candidates to make up the difference.
Polls show Romney leading in a state where 69% of voters in 2008 GOP primary exit polls identified themselves as conservative and 60% as evangelical Christians. Professor Jeffrey says South Carolina voters have a practical side that seeks electability, predicting the eventual GOP nominee in every primary since 1980.
You've got practical conservatives down here that have a tradition of voting for a nominee that's going to get that has the chance of getting the nomination and that has a chance of winning.
While New Hampshire failed to narrow the field of GOP contenders, Professor Jeffrey predicts a candidate who fares poorly here in South Carolina is more likely to drop out of the race altogether rather than face a potentially costly primary campaign in Florida. In Greenville, South Carolina, Jonathan Seri, Fox News.
The Current's Capitol Bureau Chief Chris Keating is freshly back from New Hampshire. So, Chris, I know it must have been crazy up there. Just set the mood. What was it like?
Well, it was very, very busy. It's the busiest week of the year up in New Hampshire. It's kind of like the Lake Placid Olympics. They all look forward to it. All the hotels are sold out. The restaurants are packed. It's a very big deal up there. And then on Wednesday morning, when the primary is over, everybody blows out of town.
Right, after the storm. So you said, you had mentioned to me that you were there when Mitt Romney said the now infamous, I like firing people. Explain how that happened and what you were thinking as you heard him saying it.
Yeah, he gave a very long and detailed explanation, but he eventually led up to saying, basically, that's why I like firing people. And that has already been in the ads already, and even before I left New Hampshire, it was already in the ads that fast. You can cut ads not even overnight nowadays. So as soon as he said it, I had a feeling it was going to be a problem. But out of the whole context of what he was saying, it had to do with firing your health care provider, essentially. In other words, he gave a long explanation of his friend had open heart surgery at Massachusetts General Hospital and said that if your deductible is the same, you don't shop around for different hospitals if you're having heart surgery, because you, as a person, will pay the same amount with the deductible.
We're hearing a lot about the infighting in the party. I mean, could you sense that when you were up there? I mean, any vitriol or...
Well, there's definitely a battle going on between the conservatives and the so-called moderates. I mean, everything is relative. But Santorum, Gingrich, and Perry, who did not do well in New Hampshire at all three of those, lean a little bit more conservative than Romney, and they're all staking everything on South Carolina. Gingrich basically said if he doesn't win South Carolina, he didn't say he was getting out, but he said he basically has to win it. What
were the biggest crowds? Who were the biggest crowds surrounding?
Romney crowds were pretty big. I went to a Newt Gingrich event at a Mexican restaurant, and it was fairly crowded because the restaurant was so small. And when I walked in, one of the non-Gingrich people said that he thought it was 50% press, 30% out-of-towners, and 20% New Hampshire people.
What's your sense of who might survive South Carolina, you think?
Well, certainly Romney's in the lead in the polls, which some people think is surprising, but Perry was nowhere to be found in New Hampshire. Spent all his time in South Carolina. Santorum, in South Carolina, as you know, you have military conservatives, economic conservatives, social conservatives, a lot of retired people. It's really a different mix than New Hampshire. However, Romney, who's every time you look at the television, he's on, so he is in the lead in the polls, and I wouldn't be that surprised if he does win it down there.
There were a lot of, you ran into a lot of Connecticut folks up in New Hampshire. Tell us who you saw and what their role is. Yeah,
there was Connecticut people. One of the biggest things for Connecticut is, frankly, raising money. Connecticut is a very small state, but it becomes a bit of a player by raising money. And some of the big money raisers are Scott Franz, the state senator from Greenwich, Tom Foley, who ran for governor against Malloy. Both of them were up there. Craig Stapleton, the former ambassador, he's from Greenwich. So Chris Burnham, the former state treasurer, was up there. So their main job is to raise money, but Foley and others were actually working the phones asking people to get out to vote on Tuesday.
We saw in that most recent story we just ran that South Carolina voters are asking about jobs and the economy. Not surprising. I mean, was that what they were talking? You heard people asking about? Yeah, that was Romney's strength. In other words, I went to a Chamber of Commerce meeting where he said he liked to fire people. That was at a very friendly Chamber of Commerce meeting, large crowd in a hotel ballroom. Romney's strength is on the economy. So if he can keep the message on the economy, that's when he does well. When he spills over into some of the other social issues, he's not as strong. And so I would assume he would stick with the economy. Well, it's interesting that you said that because, you know, I lived in South Carolina for a bit, covered politics down there, and I'm actually surprised that he has such a lead in South Carolina because he's not that great on social issues. And down there, in my experience, that was a big deal to South Carolina voters. Yeah. No, I think some people, even in his campaign, I talked to some Romney supporters who seemed a little surprised at the size of his lead. Yeah. Of course, that will come down. The primary is not until the 21st. So Gingrich has supposedly got $5 million from a casino mogul and will be able to run a lot of advertising. As you know, with the super PACs, it's kind of unlimited money now after the U.S. Supreme Court ruling, and these so-called super PACs can buy a lot, and the ads are not very expensive in South Carolina. Right. So if you spend $1 million on ads in South Carolina, it goes a long way. Yeah, a long way. And you know, Connecticut moved its primary date back a bit, and at the time, the Secretary of State said that could, you know, garner a little more clout for Connecticut I mean, do you think, we're not going to get nearly the amount of visits or attention from the candidate.
Right.
We don't traditionally.
I think it all depends. In other words, if Romney keeps winning and, as they say, runs the table, then it'll be over by the time you get to Connecticut,
right,
which is April 24th. If Gingrich does well in South Carolina, or Perry or Santorum, or somebody comes up and starts chopping the votes up, then Connecticut could be in play. But April 24th is kind of a while away, as you know.
A while away. We still have lots to cover. Thanks a lot. Chris Keating, freshly back from New Hampshire. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Coming up next, Connecticut has a bear problem, or do we? And how do we take care of it? And how will lawmakers help? There are lots of questions. We're going to try and get some answers.